flickered with static before stabilizing, revealing the grainy, black-and-white nightmare unfolding in my own living room. I watched, my breath caught in a throat raw from silent screaming, as Silvio moved through the debris of the penthouse like a storm made flesh. The screen showed him advancing on the mercenaries, his movements precise, brutal, and terrifyingly efficient. There was no hesitation in him, no fear, only a singular, destructive purpose that turned my blood to ice, even as it ignited a fierce pride in my chest. He was a monster, but he was my monster. The gunfire outside the heavy steel door of the panic room had ceased, replaced by the heavy, ominous silence of the aftermath. I gripped the Glock 19 with sweaty palms, my knuckles white, pointing the muzzle at the wheel of the door. I knew it was Silvio out there. I had seen him on the screen. But instinct, primitive and screaming, told me not to lower my guard until I saw his face with my own eyes. "Chloe!" His voice roared through the layers of steel, muffled but unmistakable. It wasn't the smooth, commanding baritone I heard over dinner. It was a raw, jagged sound, torn from the throat of a man who thought he had lost everything. "I'm here," I screamed back, my voice cracking. "I'm in the vault!" I heard the heavy screech of the outer locking mechanism. The wheel in the center of the door began to turn from the outside. I scrambled backward, lowering the gun but keeping it within reach, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The envelope tucked inside my robe scratched against my skin, a constant, physical reminder of the stakes. The door swung open with a groan of heavy hinges. Silvio filled the doorway. The hallway light behind him cast him in silhouette. But as he stepped into the red emergency lighting of the panic room, the details leaped out at me. His white dress shirt was ruined, splattered with grime and dark wet spots that I prayed weren't his blood. His hair was wild, falling over his forehead, and his chest was heaving, but it was his eyes that undid me. They were wide, frantic, scanning the small space until they landed on me huddled in the corner. Chloe. He crossed the distance between us in a single stride, dropping to his knees. He didn't care about the gun on the floor. He didn't care about the tactical situation. He grabbed me, his hands patting down my arms, my shoulders, my face, searching for injuries with desperate intensity. "Did they touch you? Are you hurt? Tell me." "I'm okay," I gasped, the air rushing back into my lungs in a sob. "I'm okay, Silvio." I locked the door. I fired a shot. They didn't get in. He pulled me into his chest, burying his face in my neck. I could feel him shaking, a fine, high-frequency tremor that vibrated through his rigid muscles. He smelled of cordite, sweat, and copper. It was the scent of violence. But I clung to him, wrapping my arms around his broad back, burying my hands in his ruined shirt. I thought. He trailed off, his voice thick. He pulled back, gripping my face between his large, rough hands. When I saw the door, when I heard the breach charges, "I'm here," I repeated, trying to anchor him. "We're safe." "Rocco is down," he said, the words harsh. He took 2 rounds to the vest and 1 to the leg. He held the line as long as he could. "Is he? He's alive. Medics are incoming. But we have to move. This location is burned." He stood up, pulling me with him. The sudden motion was a mistake. The adrenaline that had sustained me for the last 20 minutes suddenly evaporated, leaving a cavernous void in its wake. My vision tunneled, the edges turning gray and fuzzy. The room tilted dangerously to the left. A wave of nausea, sharper and more violent than before, crashed over me. "Chloe?" Silvio's voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. My knees gave way. I felt myself falling, the floor rushing up to meet me, but I never hit it. Silvio caught me, his arm sweeping under my knees, scooping me up against his chest as if I weighed nothing. "Enzo, get the medic up here, now!" Silvio roared, his voice deafening. The world was spinning. I tried to speak, to tell him it was just the stress, but my tongue felt heavy. As my head lolled back against his shoulder, the silk robe loosened. The friction of the movement dislodged the envelope I had hidden so carefully against my heart. It slipped out. I felt it go. I tried to grab it, my hand flapping uselessly in the air, but my coordination was gone. The white envelope fluttered down, landing on the metal floor of the panic room with a soft slap that seemed to echo louder than the gunshots. Silvio froze. He looked down. The red emergency light reflected off the glossy white paper. The logo of the obstetrics clinic was clearly visible, facing up. Time seemed to stop. The chaos of the penthouse, the shouting of the reinforcements arriving in the hallway, the smell of smoke, it all faded into the background. There was only Silvio, me, and the piece of paper that held our future. No, I whispered, the word barely a breath. Silvio didn't move for a second. Then, slowly, carefully, he shifted my weight to one arm, holding me securely against his hip. He knelt down, his movements fluid despite the violence he had just dispensed. He reached out and picked up the envelope. He stood up, his eyes never leaving the paper. He didn't open it. He didn't have to. He recognized the clinic's name. He saw the confidential patient results stamp. He looked at me. The frantic energy from the battle was gone, replaced by a stillness that was absolute. His dark eyes searched mine, seeing the truth written in my exhaustion, in the pale cast of my skin, in the protective way I had curled around myself even while fainting. "Chloe," he said, his voice unrecognizable. It was soft, shattered. "Silvio, The darkness claimed me then, dragging me down into a blissful, silent void where there were no guns, no debts, and no envelopes. When I opened my eyes, the lighting had changed. I wasn't in the red gloom of the panic room anymore. I was lying on the massive bed in the master suite. The air smelled of antiseptic and ozone. My arm stung. I looked down to see a small bandage on the inside of my elbow. An IV line had been inserted and then removed. I sat up, a rush of dizziness making me sway. Careful. Silvio was sitting in the armchair in the corner of the room, deep in the shadows. He wasn't wearing his ruined shirt anymore. He had changed into a black t-shirt that clung to his chest, emphasizing the tension in his frame. He held a glass of water in one hand and the crumpled white envelope in the other. "Drink," he commanded softly, holding out the glass. I took it, my hands trembling slightly. The water was cool and clean. I drained half the glass before I dared to look at him again. "You read it," I stated. It wasn't a question. Silvio looked down at the paper in his hand. He smoothed a crease with his thumb, his touch reverent. 6 weeks, he murmured. "You were going to tell me tonight." "Yes," I said, my voice gathering strength. "Before the rain, before Brandon, before everything went to hell." He stood up and walked to the edge of the bed. He didn't sit. He loomed over me, his presence overwhelming. "You were in a firefight," he said, his voice rising, the anger finally bleeding through. "You were running through a kill zone. You were holding a gun, with my child inside you. I did what I had to do to survive." I shot back, setting the glass on the nightstand with a sharp clink. "I wasn't going to wait for them to blow the door. You should have been nowhere near this," he shouted, turning away and pacing the length of the room, running a hand through his hair. "I brought you here. I put you in this box. I exposed you to this. You didn't know," I argued. "It is my job to know." He spun around, his face a mask of torture. "Do you understand how close we came? If that door hadn't held, if that mercenary had been faster." He choked on the words, unable to finish the thought. He walked back to the bed and sat down heavily on the edge, the mattress dipping under his weight. He reached out and placed his hand on my stomach over the silk robe. His heat seeped through the fabric. "A baby," he whispered, the anger draining out of him as quickly as it had come, leaving only naked terror. "We are having a baby." I covered his hand with mine. "We are." He looked at me, his eyes wet. "I cannot protect you here, Chloe. Not now. Not with the DeLucas moving like this. Silvio, no." He cut me off, his voice hardening with resolve. "I have a plane waiting at Teterboro. You are leaving tonight. I have a villa in Sicily near Palermo. It's a fortress. My mother's family is there. You will be safe. You will stay there until the baby is born." My heart plummeted. I knew he would say this. It was the logical move. The safe move. But it was the wrong move. Putting an ocean between us wouldn't make me any less of a target. It would only leave me frightened and alone on a plane, In a villa every enemy already knew he owned, too far away for him to reach me if something went wrong. No, I said. Silvio blinked, as if he hadn't heard me correctly. Excuse me? I said no, I repeated, pushing myself up until I was sitting straighter against the headboard. I am not going to Sicily. I am not going to hide on an island while you fight a war here. This is not a negotiation, Chloe. He stood up again, his dominance flaring. This is a war. You are a civilian. You are pregnant. You are a target. You go where I say you go because I am your husband and I need to know you are breathing. And if I leave, you lose, I said calmly. He stared at me. What are you talking about? Pass me my bag, I said, pointing to the ottoman where my purse had been recovered. Chloe, stop playing games. Give me the bag, Silvio, I snapped, matching his intensity. He paused, surprised by the steel in my voice. He grabbed the bag and tossed it onto the bed. I dug through it and pulled out my laptop. I prayed the battery had survived. It booted up, the screen casting a pale light on the duvet. You were looking for a leak, I said, typing in my password. You were tearing apart your team. You were looking for a traitor inside the organization. And I will find them, he growled. I already did, I said. I turned the laptop around so he could see the screen. Silvio frowned, looking at the spreadsheet I had compiled before the power was cut. What is this? This, I pointed to the highlighted column, is a shell company called Waitress Holdings. They've been funneling money to my father for 3 weeks. Gambling debts. Just enough to keep him hooked. Silvio's face went deadly still. Your father? Keep looking, I urged. Look who the signatory is for the affiliate company. Silvio leaned in, his eyes scanning the data. He saw the name. Brandon Miller. He straightened up slowly, the air in the room changing. It wasn't the hot anger of before. It was the cold, calculating focus of the boss. Brandon, he said, the name tasting like ash in his mouth. The ex-boyfriend. He's working for them, I explained, the words tumbling out now that he was listening. He wasn't just waiting outside the gallery to harass me. He was the spotter. He confirmed the timeline. He knew the route because he pumped my father for information. Dad probably bragged about your car, about the schedule, about how safe I was. Brandon used that to coordinate the ambush on the highway. Silvio looked from the screen to me, putting the pieces together. The spotters, the timing, it came from outside. Not my men. Your men are loyal, I said firmly. Rocco is loyal. Enzo is loyal. You were chasing ghosts in your own house, Silvio. The threat came from my past. He ran a hand over his face, exhaling a long, shuddering breath. Your father sold us out? He didn't know, I said, though the defense tasted bitter. He's weak. He thought he was just getting free money. But Brandon knew. Silvio walked to the window, staring at the closed blackout shades. I should have killed him on the sidewalk. I broke his wrist and I let him walk away. You didn't know, I said, but now we do. He turned back to me. This changes nothing about Sicily. In fact, it makes it worse. If they are using your father, they have leverage. They will use him to get to you again. Exactly, I said, which is why I have to stay. Are you insane? Silvio, listen to me. I threw the covers off my legs. They think I'm just the girlfriend. They think I'm a weakness. Brandon thinks he has an inside track because of my dad. If you send me away, they'll know you're spooked. They'll go underground. You'll never find the DeLuca leadership. I took a breath, playing the card I knew would work. But if I stay, if we play this right, I am the bait. Absolutely not. Silvio snarled instantly. Never. We don't tell them I know. I pressed on, ignoring his refusal. We act like everything is normal. We announce our engagement. A big, public party. We draw them out. Brandon won't be able to resist. He'll come to gloat or to get more intel. And when he leads us to his handlers, you crush them. Silvio stared at me as if he was seeing me for the first time. He looked at the curve of my stomach, then up to my eyes. You are pregnant, he said slowly. You are carrying my son, and you want to offer yourself as a lure to the people who just tried to execute us? I want to end this, I said fiercely. I don't want to raise this baby looking over my shoulder. I don't want to live on an island while my father gambles away my safety. I want the DeLucas gone. And I am the only one who can get close enough to Brandon to make him slip up. Silvio walked back to the bed. He sat down and took my hands in his. His grip was iron. "You are terrifying," he whispered, a mixture of awe and horror in his voice. "You look like an angel, but you think like a general. I learned from the best," I said softly. He brought my hands to his lips, kissing my knuckles, then my palms. He rested his forehead against our joined hands. I could feel the battle raging inside him. The husband who wanted to lock me in a tower versus the Don who saw the tactical brilliance of the plan. "If we do this," he said, his voice low, "you do not leave my sight. Not for a second. If you are the bait, I am the hook, and the line is very, very short. I can live with that," I said. He looked up, his eyes burning with intensity. "And your father? If he is the leak, even unwittingly, he is a liability. You know what happens to liabilities." I swallowed hard. "Handle him, Silvio. Secure him. But don't kill him. Not yet. We might need him to feed disinformation to Brandon." Silvio nodded slowly. "You are ruthless, Mia Regina," he said, "my queen," with something like awe and resignation. "I'm a mother," I corrected him, placing his hand back on my stomach. "I'm protecting what's mine." Silvio leaned forward and kissed me. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was desperate, searing, a claiming of life in the face of death. When he pulled back, his forehead rested against mine. "We will do it your way," he conceded. "We will announce the engagement. We will throw the biggest gala this city has ever seen. And we will bury them all." He stood up, the energy returning to him, focused now. He walked to the door and opened it. "Enzo!" he barked into the hallway. "Get me a secure line to the council, and get a team to pick up Arthur Foster. Quietly. Bag and tag him. Bring him to the warehouse." "Yes, boss." Silvio turned back to me. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Sharp, dangerous, and devastatingly handsome. Get dressed, Chloe," he said. "We have a wedding to plan." I watched him go, feeling the weight of the decision settle on my shoulders. I looked at the envelope on the nightstand. I picked it up and slid it back into my purse, right next to the gun I had taken from the safe. Partners. We were partners now, and God help anyone who tried to come between us. The fabric of the dress was like liquid mercury, a silver metallic silk that cascaded down my body, clinging to curves I hadn't realized I possessed until Silvio Zanarello looked at them. Standing in front of the full-length mirror in the dressing room of the penthouse, I didn't recognize the woman staring back. The copper-red waves of my hair were pinned up in an intricate, severe style that exposed the long line of my neck. My makeup was sharper, darker than my usual gallery manager aesthetic. I didn't look like a victim. I looked like a weapon sheathed in precious metal. "Turn around." Silvio's voice came from the doorway. I turned slowly. He was leaning against the frame, dressed in a tuxedo that fit him with the kind of architectural precision only Italian tailoring could achieve. But unlike the other times I had seen him in formal wear, tonight he didn't look like a businessman. He looked like a warlord preparing for a diplomatic execution. He walked into the room, his eyes scanning every inch of me, lingering on the open back of the dress where the silver fabric dipped dangerously low. He stopped behind me, his hands settling on my waist, his thumbs pressing into the silk. "You look breathtaking," he murmured, his breath ghosting over my shoulder, and entirely too exposed. "That's the point, isn't it?" I replied, meeting his gaze in the mirror. "I'm the bait. Bait has to be shiny. It has to catch the light. I hate this plan," he growled, the vibration traveling from his chest to my back. "Every instinct I have is screaming to lock you in this room and weld the door shut. And let Brandon win?" I countered, turning in his arms to face him. "Let the DeLucas keep hunting us? We tried it your way, Silvio. We tried hiding. It almost got us killed. Now we try my way. We control the narrative." He sighed, a sound of deep frustration, but he nodded. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. For a second, my heart skipped. Was this a prop for the engagement announcement? He opened it. Inside wasn't a diamond ring. It was a pair of diamond earrings, elegant drops that caught the light. "Turn," he instructed. I presented my ear. As he fastened the earring, I felt a tiny, cold weight settle against my lobe. "The left one contains a high-frequency transmitter," he explained quietly. "It bypasses the standard jamming frequencies used at these events. If you tap it twice, my team breaches the perimeter and extracts you. Lethal force authorized. No questions asked." "I won't need it," I said, though the weight of the device was a comfort. "You will wear it," he commanded, fastening the right one. "And you will take this." He handed me a clutch purse. It matched the dress, a hard-shell silver case. It felt heavy. I opened it. Inside, nestled next to a tube of lipstick and a compact mirror, was a micro-compact pistol. A SIG P238. "It's loaded. Safety is on," he said. "Do not hesitate, Chloe. If he touches you, if he tries to move you to a secondary location, you put 2 rounds in his stomach. Am I clear?" "Crystal," I whispered, snapping the purse shut. "And the tracker?" I held up my left hand. On my finger was a massive diamond ring, a prop from his family vault, flashy enough to be seen from space. But tucked into the palm of my hand was a small adhesive disc, no larger than a dime. "Ready to plant," I said. Silvio took my hand, kissing the knuckles' white-knuckled grip. "Let's go get engaged." The drive to the Rossi estate was silent. The rain had finally stopped, leaving the city slick and glistening. The Rossi family, Switzerland in our local war, was hosting the gala. It was neutral ground, which meant weapons were supposedly banned, but everyone knew the real power players brought their own security. As we pulled up to the grand entrance, flashbulbs erupted like a strobe light storm. The press was here in force, tipped off about a major announcement from the Zanarello family. "Stay close," Silvio murmured as the door opened. We stepped out onto the red carpet. The noise was deafening. Reporters shouting questions, cameras clicking. I plastered a radiant smile on my face, leaning into Silvio as if I were drunk on love rather than adrenaline. He slipped his arm around my waist, his grip firm, guiding me through the gauntlet. Inside, the ballroom was a sea of black ties and designer gowns. The air smelled of expensive perfume, champagne, and treachery. I scanned the room immediately, my eyes bypassing the politicians and socialites, hunting for the predator. "Do you see him?" Silvio asked, his voice low, his lips barely moving near my ear. "Not yet," I replied, taking a glass of champagne from a passing tray, a prop I wouldn't drink. "Your father is at the bar," Silvio noted, his tone cooling. 10 o'clock. I looked. Arthur Foster was there, nursing a tumbler of scotch. He looked terrible. His suit was ill-fitting, and he was sweating despite the cool air conditioning. He kept glancing around the room, his eyes darting nervously. He looked like a man waiting for the executioner. "He looks scared," I said, feeling a pang of pity mixed with the anger. "He should be," Silvio replied ruthlessly. "He's swimming with sharks and he's bleeding." We circulated the room, the happy couple. We accepted congratulations, shook hands, played the part. Every interaction was a calculation. I laughed at jokes I didn't hear, my mind focused entirely on the hunt. Then, I saw him. Brandon was standing near a pillar on the far side of the room, near the terrace doors. He was watching us. He held a drink, his posture relaxed, arrogant. He looked nothing like the weeping coward Silvio had broken on the sidewalk days ago. He looked confident. "Funded. Target acquired," I whispered. 3 o'clock, by the terrace. Silvio stiffened. "I see him. Stay here," I said. "I need to do this alone. If you're hovering, he won't make a move. Chloe, trust me." I cut him off. "Watch from here. If I tap my ear, you come." I pulled away from Silvio before he could stop me. I could feel his gaze burning into my back as I wove through the crowd, heading toward the ladies' room, a path that would take me directly past Brandon. I slowed my pace as I neared him, letting my gaze drift over the crowd until it accidentally landed on him. I widened my eyes in feigned surprise, then fear. I hesitated, acting like I was considering turning back. Brandon pushed off the pillar and intercepted me. "Chloe," he said, his voice smooth, oily. "You clean up nice. Better than the wet rat look from the other night." "Brandon," I said, pitching my voice to sound tremulous. "Please, Silvio is watching. If he sees you, let him watch." Brandon sneered, glancing over my shoulder. "He can't touch me here. Rossi's rules. Neutral ground. Besides, he looks busy." I glanced back. Silvio was being cornered by a senator, though I knew his attention was entirely on us. "What do you want?" I asked, clutching my purse tighter. "Why are you here?" "I'm moving up in the world, Chloe," he said, taking a step closer, invading my personal space. He smelled of scotch and mint. "Got some new backers. People who appreciate talent. Unlike you. You're delusional," I said. "You're playing a game you don't understand." "Oh, I understand it fine." He laughed softly. "I understand that your husband has a big target on his back. And I understand that you're the bullseye." He reached out, his hand brushing my bare arm. It took everything in me not to recoil. "Still single?" he mocked, repeating the phrase from that night. "Or are you going to tell me this engagement is real? I know you, Chloe. You don't love him. You love safety. You're just a gold digger looking for the biggest vault." "I love him," I said, stepping closer to him, closing the distance. "And he protects me. Something you never did." Brandon's face twisted with anger. He grabbed my upper arm, gentler than before, mindful of the crowd, but possessive. "He can't protect you from what's coming. You picked the losing side, babe. Let go of me," I hissed, feigning a struggle. I pulled my arm back sharply, stumbling slightly in my heels. As I regained my balance, I reached out as if to steady myself, my hand landing flat against the lapel of his tuxedo jacket. "Don't touch me again," I said, pushing him away. "Or what?" he smirked. "Or I'll tell everyone here that you're wearing a rental," I spat, channeling the old Chloe, the one who used to argue with him about money. I turned on my heel and walked away, my heart hammering in my throat. I didn't look back. I walked straight to the ladies' room, pushed through the door, and leaned against the marble sink, exhaling a shaky breath. I looked at my left hand. The adhesive disc was gone. It was on him, under the lapel, tucked against the wool where he wouldn't feel it. I tapped my earring once. A signal check. "I have him." Silvio's voice came through instantly, clear as a bell. "Tracker is active. Audio is live. Good work, un tesoro. Now get back to me before I burn this building down." I checked my reflection. My cheeks were flushed, my eyes bright. I looked like a woman in love, or a woman who had just planted a bomb. I left the bathroom. As I crossed the floor back to Silvio, I saw my father again. He wasn't at the bar anymore. He was moving toward the terrace doors, the same ones Brandon was standing near. My stomach dropped. "Silvio," I whispered into the air. "My father. He's moving toward Brandon." "I see it," Silvio replied. "Don't engage. Come to me. We monitor from the car. We need the conversation." I reached Silvio. He took my hand immediately, pulling me into his side. "Smile," he ordered softly. "We have an announcement to make." We walked to the stage. The band stopped. Silvio took the microphone. He looked at the crowd, then at me, with a look of such intense possession that the room went silent. "They say power is the only currency that matters," Silvio said, his voice amplifying through the hall. "But they are wrong. Loyalty is the currency of kings, and tonight I am the richest man in the world." He raised my hand, the diamond ring flashing under the chandeliers. "To my future wife, Chloe." The room erupted in applause. Flashbulbs blinded me. I smiled, waving, playing the part of the adored fiancé. But my eyes were locked on the terrace doors. Brandon was gone. My father was gone. They were outside. Together. "Let's go," Silvio whispered, dropping the microphone. "We have them." We exited the ballroom through the kitchen service entrance, avoiding the press. The armored SUV was waiting. We dove into the back seat. "Enzo, get us clear." "Rocco, give me the feed," Silvio barked. Rocco, battered but refusing to stay in the hospital, was in the front seat with a tactical tablet. He handed me a headset. "Signal is strong, boss. They're in the garden maze. No ambient noise." I put the headset on. The silence of the car was replaced by the rustle of wind in leaves and the heavy breathing of two men. "I can't do it, Brandon," a voice whined, a voice I knew better than my own. "It's too much. They have armed guards everywhere." "Shut up, Arthur," Brandon's voice cut through, distorted slightly by the fabric of his jacket. "You already took the money. You spent it. There's no backing out." I closed my eyes, a single tear escaping. "Dad, but the blueprints," my father stammered. "If I give you the electrical schematics, people could die. Chloe is there. She's at the gallery every day. Chloe won't be there." Brandon lied smoothly. "We just want the vault. It's a heist, Arthur. Nobody gets hurt. We cut the power, we blow the safe, we leave. Your daughter loses a few paintings. Insurance covers it. Everyone wins. You promise?" my father asked, desperate to believe the lie. "You promise she won't be hurt?" "I promise," Brandon said. "Now, do you have the flash drive?" There was a pause, the sound of a zipper. "It's all there," my father whispered. "The grid layout, the generator overrides, the blind spots in the cameras. God forgive me. God might." Brandon laughed darkly. "But the DeLucas pay better. Go home, Arthur. Wait for your next payment." I ripped the headset off, the nausea hitting me so hard I doubled over. "Chloe?" Silvio's hand was on my back instantly. "He gave it to him." I gasped, the betrayal feeling like a physical knife in my gut. "He gave them the security grid for the gallery. He thinks it's a heist. He thinks they're just stealing art." Silvio's face was a mask of fury. "He sold my home. He sold my wife. He's an idiot," I sobbed, the anger finally overtaking the grief. "He's a weak, pathetic idiot." Silvio looked at Rocco. "Pick up Arthur Foster, now." "Wait!" I grabbed Silvio's arm. "No!" "Chloe, he just signed a death warrant for my men. For you. If you take him now, Brandon knows the deal is blown," I argued, wiping my face furiously. "Brandon has the drive. He's going to take it to the DeLucas. If my father disappears tonight, Brandon will know we were listening." Silvio stopped, his jaw working. "So we let him walk?" "We let him walk tonight," I said, my voice turning cold, hardening into something brittle and sharp. "We let Brandon think he won. We let him deliver that drive to his masters." "And the information on it?" Silvio asked. "Is accurate," I said, "which means we know exactly how they plan to attack. They're going to hit the gallery during the auction. They're going to cut the power and use the blind spots." I looked up at Silvio, my eyes dry now. "We aren't going to fix the blind spots," I said. "We're going to move them. We're going to turn the gallery into a kill box." Silvio looked at me with a mixture of terror and admiration. "And your father?" "He's not my father anymore," I whispered, touching the envelope hidden in my purse. "He made his choice. Now he lives with it." The car sped into the night, carrying us away from the party, away from the pretense of civilization, and back into the darkness where we belonged. The warehouse was cold, a vast industrial space on the outskirts of the harbor that smelled of rust and salt water. It was the nerve center of Silvio's operation, a stark contrast to the polished elegance of the Rossi Gala we had just left. Banks of monitors lined one wall, flickering with data streams, satellite feeds, and the jagged waveform of the audio coming from the tracker on Brandon's lapel. I sat on a metal folding chair, still wearing my silver metallic gown, the hem pooling on the dirty concrete floor like a puddle of mercury. A heavy wool blanket was draped over my shoulders, but I couldn't stop shivering. It wasn't the cold. It was the aftershock of the voice I was hearing in my earpiece. Silvio stood behind me, his hand resting on the back of my chair, a silent, solid presence. He had removed his tuxedo jacket and rolled up his sleeves, ready for work. Rocco was at the main console, typing furiously with his uninjured hand, his face grim. "Audio is clear," Rocco announced. "Target is moving. Vehicle is heading north toward the DeLuca territory." I adjusted the headset, pressing it tighter against my ear. The sounds of the car engine were a steady drone, punctuated by Brandon singing along to the radio. He sounded happy. He sounded victorious. He has no idea, Silvio murmured, leaning down. He thinks he's bringing them the keys to the kingdom. He is, I said, my voice hollow. Just not the keys, he thinks. The audio shifted. The car slowed, turn signals clicking. A heavy gate opening. Voices. I'm here to see Giancarlo, Brandon's voice said, dripping with self-importance. I have the package. Step out of the vehicle, a rough voice commanded. Hands where I can see them. I flinched. Silvio's hand tightened on the chair. Relax, Brandon said. I'm on the payroll. Ask your boss. The girl's father delivered. I closed my eyes, hearing him say it. The girl's father, detached, transactional, made the bile rise in my throat again. My father wasn't a person to them. I wasn't a person. We were assets and liabilities. We have confirmation, Rocco said. He's entering the DeLuca compound in the Bronx. That confirms the alliance. We have enough, Silvio said, straightening up. We take them down. I'll mobilize the hit squads. No, I said, pulling the headset off and letting it drop around my neck. Not yet. Silvio walked around the chair to face me. Chloe, we have the location. We have the proof. We can end this tonight. If you attack the compound now, it's a siege, I argued, my mind racing through the scenarios. They'll be dug in. You'll lose men. And Brandon, in the chaos, he might slip away, or they might realize the drive is a trap and destroy it before they use it. So what do you propose? Silvio asked, crossing his arms. Let them plan the attack, I said, standing up. The silver dress shimmered under the harsh halogen lights. Let them think they have the advantage. My father gave them the electrical schematics for the gallery. He showed them where the generator overrides are. He showed them the ventilation shafts. I walked over to the large table where a blueprint of the gallery was spread out. I traced the lines with a finger that trembled only slightly. They're going to cut the power here. I pointed to the sub-basement. Then they're going to enter through the loading dock, using the darkness. They think the cameras in the East Wing are blind because of the construction. That's what the drive says. And they are blind, Silvio noted. We turn them back on, I said. But we feed them a loop. We let them see an empty hallway while we stack a dozen men behind the walls. Silvio looked at the map, then at me. You want to invite them in? I want to trap them, I corrected. The charity auction is in 2 days. It's the perfect target. High value, lots of civilians to use as leverage. Just like Brandon threatened. They won't be able to resist. It's risky. Rocco grunted from the console. Civilians in the crossfire. We verify the guest list, Silvio said, his mind catching up to mine. We fill the room with our people. Wives, cousins, associates. No real civilians. And my father? I asked, looking at Silvio. Silvio's expression darkened. We have a team on him. He's at a motel on Route 9. Drinking. He's going to wait for his next payment, I said bitterly. He's not going anywhere. Chloe. Silvio stepped closer, taking my hands. You need to make a call on him. If we leave him in play, he is a loose end. If Brandon gets suspicious, he might torture him for more intel. Or he might just kill him to tie up the loop. I looked at the blueprint. I looked at the man I loved, who was willing to burn the world for me. And then I thought about the man who had raised me, the man who had sold my safety for a stack of gambling chips. Secure him, I said, my voice barely a whisper, but quietly. Make it look like he skipped town. A gambling debt run. And then, Silvio asked. Bring him to the basement of the safe house, I said. I want him on ice until after the auction. He doesn't get to talk to anyone. He doesn't get a phone. He sits in a room and thinks about what he did. And after? We'll decide after we survive, I said. Silvio nodded to Rocco. Execute the extraction. Standard bag and tag. No injuries if possible, but don't let him make a scene. On it, boss. Rocco picked up a radio. I turned away, walking toward the dark window of the warehouse that looked out over the black water of the harbor. I felt hollowed out. The adrenaline of the party had faded, leaving a cold ache in my chest. Silvio came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist, pulling my back against his chest. He rested his chin on my shoulder, careful not to crush the silver silk. "You did good tonight," he whispered. "You were perfect." "I feel sick," I admitted. "He's my dad, Silvio. He taught me how to ride a bike. He used to make me pancakes on Sundays." "I know," Silvio said, tightening his hold. "And that is why this is the hardest thing you will ever do. But he is not that man anymore. Addiction took that man away a long time ago. The man who sold us out is a stranger." I leaned my head back against him. "Is the baby okay?" The baby is a Zanarello," Silvio said with fierce conviction. "He is tough, like his mother." He turned me around in his arms. "We are going home, to the real house. We have 24 hours to turn the gallery into a fortress. You need to sleep." "I can't sleep," I said. "You will," he promised. "I will watch over you. No one gets in, no one gets out." We left the warehouse, the cold night air biting at my exposed skin. As I climbed into the SUV, I looked back at the city skyline. Somewhere out there, Brandon was celebrating. Somewhere out there, my father was drinking himself into a stupor, thinking he had won a reprieve. They didn't know that the girl in the silver dress wasn't a victim anymore. They didn't know that I had traded my innocence for a Glock and a plan. "Enzo," Silvio said as the car started, "take us home and tell the crew to prep the gallery. We're going to war." I rested my hand on my stomach, hidden beneath the metallic fabric. "Hold on, little one," I thought. "Just a little longer. Mommy is going to clean up the mess." The car merged onto the highway, the lights blurring into streaks of red and white. I didn't look at my phone. I didn't look at the tracker app. I just watched Silvio's reflection in the window. A dark guardian in a world of glass and steel. The trap was set. Now, we just had to wait for the wolves to come to dinner. The amethyst dress was a statement of war disguised as couture. The deep, rich purple silk wrapped around my body like a second skin, the color of royalty and bruises, trailing behind me in a dramatic train that hissed softly against the polished marble floors of the Zanarello gallery. It was the night of the charity auction, the night we had advertised to the world, and specifically to Brandon, as the moment the gallery would be most vulnerable. I stood on the mezzanine overlooking the main hall, my hand resting on the velvet rope. Below me, the space was filling with people. To an untrained eye, it was the usual mix of high society donors, art collectors, and philanthropists. But I knew better. Every waiter carrying a tray of champagne was a soldier. The coat-check girl was an expert marksman. The older couple admiring the abstract sculpture near the entrance were retired intelligence operatives Silvio kept on retainer. We had emptied the guest list of anyone innocent. Tonight, the gallery was a stage, and the audience was entirely composed of wolves waiting for a pack of hyenas to breach the doors. "You are gripping the rail too hard," a low voice murmured beside me. Silvio appeared at my elbow, looking devastating in a black tuxedo that concealed the shoulder holster I knew he was wearing. He wasn't looking at the crowd. He was looking at me, his dark eyes scanning my face for cracks in the porcelain mask I had constructed. "I'm fine," I lied, loosening my grip. "Just waiting for the curtain to rise. The perimeter is secure," Silvio said, his voice a low rumble meant only for me. "The feed from the loading dock shows movement. They took the bait. They are cutting the external power feeds now. And the backup generator is rigged to fail after 10 seconds, Silvio confirmed. Just long enough to give them hope, then plunge them into the dark. That's when we switched to thermal." I looked down at the crowd. My father wasn't there yet. We had brought him out of the safe house for this, staged him in the manager's office downstairs with a bottle of scotch and a fake promise that he was there to supervise the transfer of funds. He was the final piece of the lure. Brandon needed to believe his inside man was in position. "It's almost time," I whispered, checking the diamond watch on my wrist. 8:58 p.m. "Go to the podium," Silvio instructed. "Stay behind the ballistic glass. Do not move until I give the clear." "I know the drill, Silvio. Chloe?" He caught my hand, pulling me back for a split second. His thumb brushed over the pulse point of my wrist. "I love you. Remember that when the lights go out." I love you too, I said, my throat tight. Now go hunt. He melted into the shadows of the upper corridor, moving to his tactical position. I took a deep breath, smoothed the silk of my purple dress, and descended the grand staircase. As I reached the podium at the front of the room, the murmur of the crowd died down. I looked out at the sea of faces. Our people, all of them, and forced a smile. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, my voice amplified by the microphone. Thank you for joining us tonight. The Zanarello Gallery is proud to present. Click. The heavy thud of high-voltage breakers tripping echoed through the building. The crystal chandeliers flickered and died. The room plunged into absolute darkness. For a heartbeat, there was silence. Then, the emergency lights kicked on. Dim, amber strips along the floor, just enough to prevent panic, but leaving the vast open spaces in shadow. Please remain calm, I said, my voice steady. We seem to be experiencing a technical difficulty. It was the cue. In my earpiece, Rocco's voice crackled. Breach at the loading dock. 12 hostiles. They're moving toward the east wing hallway. The trap was sprung. I stood frozen behind the bulletproof lectern, gripping the sides. I couldn't see the east wing from here, but I could imagine it. Brandon and the DeLuca strike team were moving through what they thought was a blind spot. They were expecting empty corridors and disabled cameras. Instead, they were walking into a kill box. I heard the first muffled shots, suppressed fire, like heavy coughs in the distance. The guests in the main hall didn't scream. They moved with synchronized precision, drawing weapons from purses and jackets, forming a defensive perimeter around the exits. East wing clear, Rocco reported, his voice grim. 6 hostiles down. The rest are falling back toward the main hall. They're realizing it's a setup. Flush them out, Silvio's voice cut in. Drive them into the light. The double doors at the back of the gallery burst open. It wasn't the tactical team I expected. It was Brandon. He stumbled into the room, his expensive suit disheveled, his eyes wild with panic. He was dragging someone with him. A man who looked small and broken in his grip. My father. Brandon had a gun pressed to my father's temple. He looked around the room, expecting to see terrified civilians he could cow into submission. Instead, he saw 50 guns pointed directly at his chest. The silence that fell over the room was heavier than the darkness. "Back off!" Brandon screamed, his voice cracking. He dragged my father toward the center of the room, using him as a shield. "I'll kill him. I swear to God, I'll paint the walls with him." Arthur Foster was weeping, his legs dragging on the floor. He looked up, his eyes searching the room until they found me standing on the stage, bathed in the faint glow of the emergency exit sign. "Chloe," he sobbed. "Chloe, help me. He's crazy." I didn't move. I stood like a statue in my amethyst gown, watching the man who had given me life being held by the man who had tried to destroy it. Silvio stepped out from the shadows near the staircase. He held a pistol at his side, relaxed, terrifyingly calm. "It's over, Brandon," Silvio said, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. "Look around you. There is no escape. The DeLucas aren't coming to save you. They're already dead in the hallway." Brandon whipped his head around, seeing the bodies of his backup being dragged away by Silvio's men in the background. The realization hit him. He had been played. The blueprints, the blind spots, the heist. It was all a lie. Brandon stared at me, hatred contorting his face. "You set me up. You bitch. You set me up." "I protected my family," I said, my voice amplified by the microphone, booming through the hall. "Something you know nothing about." "I have your father!" Brandon shrieked, jamming the gun harder into Arthur's skull. Arthur whimpered, a pathetic sound. "You care about this old drunk, don't you? You paid his debts. You covered for him. Let me walk out of here or he dies." I looked at my father. I looked at the man who had taken Brandon's money, who had handed over the schematics of my home, who had sold my safety for a few more weeks at the blackjack table. I felt a strange, cold clarity settle over me. The grief I had felt in the car was gone. The anger was gone. There was only a hollow space where a daughter's love used to be. I stepped out from behind the ballistic glass. "Chloe, stay back," Silvio ordered sharply, raising his weapon. I ignored him. I walked to the edge of the stage, looking down at Brandon and my father. You think that's leverage? I asked Brandon, my voice steady. You think holding him gives you power over me? I know it does, Brandon yelled, sweating profusely. You're weak, Chloe. You always were. You can't let him die. I looked Arthur Foster in the eye. I saw the fear there. Yes. But I also saw the recognition. He knew what he had done. He knew in that moment that he had spent the last of his credit. He sold me, I said to Brandon, my voice ringing clear. He sold the maps to this building. He sold the lives of my husband and my unborn child. He traded me for a stack of chips. Brandon blinked, confused by my tone. He's your father. He was my father, I corrected. Now, he's just a stranger who owes a debt he can't pay. I took another step forward, the purple silk rippling around my legs. You want to shoot him, Brandon? I asked softly. Go ahead. You can't kill a man who is already dead inside. The room gasped, a collective intake of breath from the hardened soldiers and killers assembled there. Even Silvio looked at me with wide, shocked eyes. Arthur let out a wail of despair. Chloe, no! I'm sorry. I didn't know. You knew, I said coldly. You just didn't care. Brandon hesitated. He had expected tears. He had expected begging. He had expected me to trade Silvio's life for Arthur's. He didn't know how to handle a woman who had cut the cord. In that split second of hesitation, Brandon's gun drifted a fraction of an inch away from Arthur's head as he stared at me in horror. That was all Silvio needed. Crack. The sound of the shot was deafening in the enclosed space. Brandon's head snapped back. A dark hole appeared in the center of his forehead. The look of surprise was frozen on his face as his knees buckled. He collapsed backward, the gun clattering uselessly to the marble floor. Arthur screamed, scrambling away from the body on his hands and knees, covered in the spray of Brandon's blood. He curled into a ball, sobbing hysterically. Silvio lowered his weapon. He didn't look at the body. He walked straight to the stage, vaulted onto it, and pulled me into his arms. Are you okay? He demanded, his hands gripping my shoulders. Chloe, look at me. I looked up at him. I felt numb. I'm okay. That was... He shook his head, searching for the word. I have never seen anything like that. I had to make him doubt, I whispered. I had to make him freeze. You did, Silvio said. You saved us. He turned to the floor. Rocco and 2 other guards were standing over my father. Arthur was still weeping, rocking back and forth. Get him up, Silvio ordered. Rocco hauled Arthur to his feet. My father looked up at the stage, his eyes pleading. Chloe, thank you. Oh God, thank you. I knew you wouldn't let him hurt me. I knew... Take him away, I interrupted, turning my back on him. Arthur froze. What, Chloe? Where are they taking me? I'm your dad. I stopped. I didn't turn around. I spoke to the empty air in front of me. You're a liability, Arthur. And I'm a Zanarello now. We clean up our messes. Chloe! He screamed as Rocco dragged him toward the exit. Chloe, please, I'm sorry, Chloe! The doors swung shut, cutting off his voice. The silence returned to the gallery. I felt a hand on my waist. Silvio turned me around. He didn't say anything. He just pulled me against his chest, burying his face in my hair. I stood there in my amethyst dress, surrounded by armed men and a dead body. And finally, I let myself shake. It's done, Silvio whispered into my ear. The DeLucas are broken. Brandon is gone. It's done. I rested my head on his shoulder, closing my eyes. Is it? Or is this just who we are now? This is who we have to be to survive, he said. But we are together. And that is the only thing that matters. He lifted me into his arms, carrying me off the stage, stepping over the wreckage of the night. I buried my face in his neck, inhaling the scent of him, and let the darkness take the rest of the memories away. 7 months later, the rain was hammering against the glass, a relentless rhythm that seemed to echo the beating of my own heart. 7 months had crawled by since the night we turned the gallery into a battleground, but the storm outside felt eerily familiar. It was a dark, stormy night, almost identical to the one where I had stood on the sidewalk outside the gallery, pregnant and terrified, waiting for a savior. But tonight, the room was warm. The air smelled of lavender and sterilized cotton. And I wasn't waiting for anyone. He was already here. I lay back against the pillows of the hospital bed, exhausted in a way that felt bone-deep but strangely euphoric. My body felt light, emptied out, sore but victorious. Silvio was standing by the window, looking out at the storm. He wasn't wearing a tuxedo or a tactical vest. He was wearing a soft gray sweater and jeans, looking younger, softer than the world ever allowed him to be. In his arms, he held a bundle wrapped in a white blanket. He was swaying gently, rocking back and forth, murmuring something in Italian that was too low for me to catch. "Is he asleep?" I asked, my voice raspy. Silvio turned. The look on his face broke me. The ruthless Don, the man who had put a bullet in Brandon's head without blinking, was looking at the tiny creature in his arms with an expression of absolute terrified wonder. "He is staring at me," Silvio whispered, walking back toward the bed. "He has your eyes, Chloe. Hazel. But he has my frown. Poor kid." I smiled weakly. "Give him here." Silvio leaned down and placed the baby in my arms. "Matteo. Our son." He was tiny, perfect, with a shock of dark hair and a scowl that indeed rivaled his father's. He shifted in his sleep, his little hand curling into a fist against my chest. "He's perfect," I breathed, touching his cheek. "He is a miracle," Silvio corrected, sitting on the edge of the bed. He reached out and stroked Matteo's head with one finger. I never thought I would have this. A son. A future that wasn't just blood and gunpowder. "We fought for him," I said. "He earned his place here." Silvio nodded. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a thick envelope. He placed it on the bedside table. "What's that?" I asked. "The deed," Silvio said quietly. "For the farmhouse in Montana." I looked at the envelope. I knew what it meant. My father. Not the myth I had clung to as a kid, but the broken, dangerous man he had proved himself to be. Arthur had been in a holding cell for the last 7 months. Sober. Terrified. We hadn't spoken. I hadn't visited. He is on a plane now," Silvio said. "Escorted by 2 of my men. The house is isolated. It has a garden, a library, but no internet, no phone lines. And the nearest town is 50 miles away. Prison," I said. "Sanctuary," Silvio corrected. "He is safe there. The DeLucas are gone, but there are always other wolves. He can't gamble in Montana. He can't sell secrets. He can live out his days in peace." "Does he hate me?" I asked, looking down at Matteo. "He cried when we told him," Silvio said. "He asked if the baby was a boy or a girl. I told him it was a boy. He said to tell you he hopes you're a better parent than he was." I felt a single tear slide down my cheek. "That's a low bar." "You have already cleared it," Silvio said, wiping the tear away with his thumb. "You protected your son. You faced down a gunman for him. You are the best mother he could ask for." He leaned in and kissed me. A soft, lingering kiss that tasted of relief and promise. When he pulled back, he rested his forehead against mine. "The business is settled," he said. "The territories are secure. Rocco and Enzo are already folding the crews into something that actually looks like order. For the first time in 10 years, we are at peace." Peace. I tested the word. It sounded strange. "What do we do with peace?" "We live," Silvio said. "We raise Matteo. We buy more art. We argue about paint colors for the nursery." I laughed, a tired, happy sound. I was thinking gold, to match the robe. "Gold is good," he agreed. He looked at me, his eyes dancing with a flicker of the old dangerous spark. "You know," he murmured, glancing at the ring on my finger. The real one this time. A massive emerald-cut diamond that he had placed there the day after the shooting. I realized something. "What?" "That night on the street, when Brandon asked you..." I smiled, remembering the fear, the rain, and the way Silvio had emerged from the car like a dark god. "If I was still single?" I finished. "Yes." He kissed my temple, then kissed Matteo's head. "I never let you answer him properly." I looked at my husband. I looked at our son. I looked at the rain falling harmlessly against the window, unable to touch us in our warm, secure tower. I think the answer was pretty clear, I whispered, leaning into his touch. I was never single, Silvio. Even before we met, I was just waiting for you to come and claim me. And I did, he said, wrapping his arms around both of us. And I always will. Outside, the storm raged on. But inside, in the quiet circle of our family, the silence was finally, perfectly enough. The end.